Okay, so now that we configured our BIOS properly to boot into the USB stick that has the Qubes image, as you can see, we managed to successfully boot into Qubes, and we have the installer right here. So as you can see right now, we have two options. We can select the first option to go ahead and install Qubes straight away, or we can go with the second option to test the hardware that we have first, and then install Qubes if everything is fine. So I'm going to go with the second option, so I'm going to press the down arrow and hit enter to first test the hardware that I have, and if everything is fine, we will go ahead and install Qubes. Perfect, so we have the installer here, which means that we passed all the tests so far. Now, the next steps are actually going to be pretty simple. First, it's asking us for the language. I'm going to keep it at English. You can change it to whatever language you want. So I'm just going to click on Continue here on the bottom right. Next, we have a window that allows us to change a number of settings. You can change the keyboard, the time, the language. I'm actually going to keep everything the same. The only thing that I want to change is under the system category in there, which is the installation destination. This is the location where Qubes is going to be installed to, and this is the only difference that I've always been talking about between installing Qubes to as a main operating system or installing it on a USB stick. So we're going to click on this to change the setting. And this will show us a window that will list all the storage devices connected to this computer. So the first storage device that I have there on the left, you can see the size of it is 931 gigabytes. This is the built-in hard drive inside my computer. So if you want to install Tails on this hard drive as a main operating system on this computer, you'll need to select this hard drive. Alternatively, if you want to install Qubes on a USB stick and then use it as a live operating system, similar to what we were doing with Tails, so you'll be able to connect it to any computer that supports Qubes and use it on that computer, and then when you remove it, the computer will be back to using its default operating system. If you want to do this, then connect a second USB device to this computer. The minimum size of this USB device should be 32 gigabytes. As you can see, I have one connected to it, and its size is actually 57 gigabytes, so it's over the minimum. So all I'm going to do right now is literally just click on the storage device that I want to install Qubes to, which is my USB device right here. As you can see, it's ticked right now, so it's telling me that this is where Qubes is going to be installed to. And again, keep in mind that when you select the device in here, everything stored on this storage device will be removed and Qubes will be installed there. So make sure you don't have anything important to you because it'll be erased. So I'm going to click on Done there on the top left. Now Qubes by default will encrypt the storage device that you pick. So right now it's asking me for a passphrase to use for this encryption. We'll be using this password to unlock the storage device that we picked in the future when we want to use Qubes. So I'm going to put my password in here, and I'm going to click on Save Passphrase. Now, in general, you should go back to the main menu at this stage. In my case, the USB device that I picked is not formatted properly. I intentionally did this just in case you face this issue, so if you're back at the main window, this is perfect. If you got the same warning that I have right here, then follow what I'm going to do in order to properly format the storage device and install Qubes on it. So we're going to click on Reclaim Space here at the bottom right. We're going to click on Delete All. And we're going to click on Reclaim Space. And that's it. We're back at the main window, and we're good to go. So we're going to click on Begin Installation on the bottom right here. Now, like I said, this will take some time, so be patient with it. It will even take longer time if you're installing it to a USB stick, like I'm doing right now. So I'm going to pause the video, and we'll resume once the installation is finished. Okay, so now the installation is complete. We will need to create a user in order to boot into Qubes using the USB stick. So I'm going to click here on User Creation. I'm gonna set a username, and then I'm gonna set a password. And I'm gonna click on Done. And right now I'm gonna click on Finish Configuration on the bottom right. Okay, now the configuration is complete. And as you can see here at the bottom right, I can click on Reboot to reboot the computer. And then if I keep the second USB stick connected to the computer, it'll automatically boot into Qubes because I changed the boot order. Or if I disconnect all the USB sticks, it'll boot into the default operating system that this computer runs on. So I'm going to click on Reboot. And as soon as the computer restarts, I will disconnect the first USB stick, this one. This is the one that I used to install the Qubes image, and I kept the second one, the bigger one, connected to the computer in order to boot into the Qubes operating system, and as you can see, it's automatically booting into Qubes. So it's very important to distinguish between the two USB sticks. We use one of them in order to install Qubes, either to the built-in hard drive as a main operating system or to another USB stick, and then if we installed it on another USB stick, the second one will be the one that we use when we want to boot into the actual operating system. Right now it's booting into the operating system. Be patient with it. And as it's booting, as you can see, it's asking me for the disk password. This is the encryption passphrase that we chose when we installed Qubes. So I'm going to enter it and hit enter and just wait for the operating system to start. Now we're going to click on Qubes OS to set some final options. I'm going to keep everything to the default settings. You might want to enable this option if you want to download updates over the Tor network. I'm going to keep it unchecked because that'll slow it down. Downloading updates is usually not banned, so you can just keep this unchecked. So I'm just going to click on Done and wait for Qubes to configure the virtual machines needed to run the whole operating system. Okay, so the configuration is finally complete now. This did take some time again, and it actually seemed like it froze at some stage there, so you will get this during the installation process if it seems like it's stuck at a certain point. As long as the mouse is moving, then don't turn off the computer. Just give it its time, be patient with it, and it should finish the installation. So, now everything is done. I'm going to click on Finish Configuration here at the bottom right. And perfect. Now we have the normal login screen for Qubes. So now in the future, all you have to do is connect the second USB stick to the computer that you want to boot Qubes from. Boot from USB, and you will get to this screen. You won't go through the configuration every time. So, put the password that we set, hit enter, and perfect. Now we are inside the Qubes desktop. Now you can see this is very similar to a basic Linux interface. If you have some experience with that, you'll be able to easily navigate this. If you don't worry about it. We'll talk about it in details in future lectures. But right now, we finished installing Qubes as a live operating system to a USB stick. Now to turn it off, we're going to go to the top right. Click on Shutdown, and click on Shutdown again. Now just to show you, so if I disconnect my second USB stick, this one right there, this is the one that we installed Qubes to. So if I disconnect it and start my computer, you'll see that it's going to boot into Windows, into the operating system that it used to run before by default. So this is the whole point of installing Qubes to a USB stick. We'll be able to connect it to any computer that can run Qubes, use Qubes on that computer, and when we're done, the computer will be back to its original state, and we'll be able to take this USB stick with us anywhere we want and use Qubes from it.